It's 9 o'clock. Call the Blanco County Commissioners Court to order this Tuesday, July 28th, 2020. Ask Ms. Waller to call the roll.
Judge Brady.
Here.
Commissioner Weir. Here. Commissioner Eaton.
Here.
Commissioner Weisman.
Here.
And Commissioner Grant.
Here.
All right, you'll join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 involves public comment. First up today is Ms. Deanne Welch.
Y'all know what the Peter Principle is, the theory that people rise to their level of incompetence. Take, for example, Tommy Weir, whose leadership and construction expertise y'all relied on when you welcomed Kinder Morgan into Blanco County. Your job was not and is not to represent Kinder Morgan. You wouldn't even give people a public hearing on the issue. Now, Tommy meant well, but unfortunately, his construction expertise was inadequate to meet the needs of negotiating with Kinder Morgan. For example, it was only after the drilling fluid accident had contaminated Blanco County wells that the public learned about the accident. It had not been deemed reportable by Kinder Morgan before, even though such reportage is required by law. Before approving the original agreements with Kinder Morgan, Tommy had been advised about incident reporting requirements. But Tommy did not know what he did not know. He had risen to his level of incompetence when he voted for the agreements without understanding. So when this court renegotiated with Kinder Morgan, granting Tommy daily contact and inspection privileges with Kinder Morgan, presumably in a bid to inspire confidence, the public could take no confidence. Likewise, Judge Bray, your promised weekly dialogues with Alan Ford inspire no confidence. You have all had available to you free, expert advice from a civil engineer uniquely qualified by profession with experience in overland, heavy construction, environmental regulation, accident investigation, hazmat response, and emergency management. But you have consistently ignored his entreaties. You have sacrificed the best practices of industry standards to your homage of self-importance and self-reliance. In your pipeline negotiations with Kinder Morgan, thus far, stand as excellent examples of the Peter Principle in government. Thank you.
And Mr. Kenneth Welch.
It is unfortunate that you do not recognize the environmental risk of the river crossing last year. All last summer and again in November, members of the community, including myself, pointed out the risks and the deficiencies in the proposal. A brief history of the interactions reveals a sad set of errors on the part of Kinder Morgan and the Blanco County negotiating team. Blanco County failures. Kinder Morgan out-negotiated the Blanco County team when they dangled their investment agreement before them. I call it a bribe, even though the term seems to hurt Judge Bray's feelings. Kinder Morgan used this influence to influence the negotiating team. Judge Bray used to bribe the Blanco County citizens, hoping to calm their opposition or influence their votes or both. Kinder Morgan dangled the job offer before a member of the team, including Kim Ashby, as Judge Bray noted November 12th last year. It was just another negotiating tactic that Kinder Morgan used to influence the judgment of the inexperienced and ill-equipped significant than the reluctance to require county engineering inspectors with the authority to stop the construction when Kinder Morgan deviated from standards or the best practices they espouse. Kinder Morgan's representative, Alan Ford, lies to this court. Judge Gray has the authority to require testimony under oath. He allowed Alan Ford's lies by not doing so. Kinder Morgan's failure. Drilling crews broke through the karst near the Blanco River, contaminating the wells of nearby residents. Not a best practice. Kinder Morgan violated the law when it failed to comply with the incident reporting requirements. Not a best practice. Kinder Morgan ignored manufacturer's recommendations by storing the epoxy-coated pipe in the Texas sun far beyond the recommended time limit. Not a best practice. Kinder Morgan allowed erosion and excessive stormwater runoff, contaminating surface water. Not a best practice. Kinder Morgan has continuously violated state roadway signage statutes by placing directional signs on the state highway property. Not best practice. These failures paint a bleak picture of the project. Many of the mistakes cannot be corrected. However, future failures are preventable. You are in a position to redeem yourselves for some of the failures by raising the amount of the investment agreement. This will send a message to Kinder Morgan regarding their activities in Blanco County, and it will also show the citizens of Blanco County that you learn from mistakes by bringing a better compensation package to the county. I urge you to require Kinder Morgan to add at least $1 million to the agreement. It should be used to fund an endowment for the community trust to be managed by a group of Blanco County citizens. The citizens group would determine when and how to distribute funds while maintaining the principle to generate future community project funding. And one other thing, I hope today you'll give us an update on the incident that occurred off of Ted Knowles River this past week.
Nope, leave it up there.
Brenda Freed.
I live in Westby County, but I pay taxes in Blanco County. The commissioners owe the constituents of Blanco County transparency as to the type, as to the amount and type of funding that has or will be received from Kinder Morgan in a timely manner. As far as we know, this company's contractors have tried twice to one of two rivers. Both times they have discharged toxic drilling fluids into the aquifers and contaminated the drinking water in the wells of several households, at least 6. Terry Albright and Paul Fowler have given me permission to say that their water is still not drinkable, and the response of Kinder Morgan has been inadequate. And they have a neighbor whose well was contaminated 5 weeks later that Kinder Morgan takes no responsibility for. To date, no fines, no orders to shut down and get the hill country, protect the hill country. And I think there needs to be a consequence. And if we can't stop it, then there needs to be a consequence, and I support Mr. Welch's idea of some kind of endowment where Kinder Morgan gives you money, the money is distributed over a period of time, so that the county continues to benefit from this money. Because without consequence, they just keep going. Now what's happening at the Knowles River, now are they going to cut a whole other slot through another part to make it work? I mean, are you going to allow that? So if the consequence can only be money, then I'm in favor of you trying to get as much money as you can to last over a period of time. More wells could be affected. And I agree, Alan Ford stood here and lied. He said the gas was going to supply the counties. It's not going to supply these counties. The gasoline is being exported, or the gas is being exported. So I'm just here to state that if there's any money, it needs to be used in a transparent way, and everything that we said would happen. Okay. You guys are responsible. Thank you.
Terry Casparis.
Good morning. Well, we all know about the March incident that injected 36,000 Court in Austin, at which Judge Robert Pittman may issue a stay of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers authorization under the Clean Water Act to allow the pipeline. And that would halt water crossing work along the route. The March drilling incident is cited in the motion as evidence of violation. So we'll see what happens. Yet Kinder Morgan is very good at getting their way. They know that money talks. To some, it makes Kinder Morgan appear as a good neighbor and a benevolent donor to good causes. This is not benevolence. They are protecting their ability to make millions. I don't contest that payments under the investment agreement go to good causes. They do. But these one-time payments are nowhere close to adequate reimbursement to the citizens of Blanco County for the rate of our landscape, the humiliation of landowners, and the risk that we'll be left with that risk for a very long time. One day soon, their crews will be gone, and the brief income bump experienced by local businesses will evaporate. The payments to our good causes will end. Meanwhile, Kinder Morgan will keep counting the millions they will reap from our damaged land and our ongoing risk. This Commissioner's Court has made it too easy for Kinder Morgan. Why not demand annual investment payments to continue meeting local needs? They're going to keep making money. If the pipeline must be here for a long time, why should we not receive some ongoing benefit to offset what Blanco County has given up? Thank you.
Item 4 on the agenda is your review and consideration of the minutes Ms. Wallace prepared.
Make a motion to dispense with reading of the minutes and accept them as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Granberg, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, there's a line item transfer involving Mr. Granberg.
Make a motion to approve line item transfers as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Eaker, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The outstanding bills.
Make a motion to approve the outstanding bills in the amount of $154,088.52.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Granberg, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 8 on the agenda involves I'm sorry, did I skip 7? My mistake. Okay. And we have a former commissioner, I guess Commissioner Emeritus, or whatever a appropriate title to recognize his longstanding dedication to the county. Commissioner Soltemeyer is here. We put him on the Capital Area Housing Finance Corporation to replace former Commissioner Bob Mock a couple of years back. And it's a kind of a standing history with Capital Area Housing Finance, of which Blanco is a member, along with 7 other counties, that there's sometimes it's not a guarantee and it's never necessarily the same, but sometimes there is a sort of like a dividend, if you will, that they provide to the various counties after a year end of activities before the corporation. And it has been the tradition that the county judges of the counties apply that money to an area housing need. When I first got here and learned of it, we used some of it for the housing authority. I think at that year it was only like $15,000, and we used it for some, I believe, some plumbing needs. We've also used some for the apartment, the senior living apartment down south on Blanco Avenue, not the newer one, the older one, that usually needs some kind of repair. At any rate, I think last year's money went to assist in constructing the CRC, the Community Resource Center. And this year's money that Mr. Soltemeier brings to us today is going to go for, let me get the name right, the Johnson City Oaks LP Limited Partnership, which is going to be, basically it's constructing workforce housing on what's left of the tract behind the Community Resource Center. Of course, it's for $100,000. Of course, that won't pay for constructing workforce housing, but it will certainly assist. And so we are glad to provide this check for $100,000 to the Texas Housing Foundation, and specifically the Johnson City Oaks LP, which comes out of the Texas Housing Foundation. And is Mark's here today? I didn't see him. Okay. And so both Commissioner Soltemeier from the Capital Area Housing Finance Corporation and Mark Mayfield, the director of the Texas Housing Foundation, are here, one giving, one receiving. And if you gentlemen would like to say something, can you come on to the microphone so we can keep it?
Mark, you got something to say?
Really, I want to tell the court and the citizens of Blanco County that I'm very, very pleased that the Capital Area Housing Foundation was able to come up with this kind of money. We gave it to all 9 counties this year. This is just part of it. We've had a real good last year and good this year so far. I'd love to say that we know that we'll get another $100,000 next year. I can't do that. We got to see how a year ago. It's just like it does. Whatever we can accomplish at the capital area is how we get the money. Then we take that money and give it back to the county. I'm very pleased to be on that board. Enjoy it, and it's really my pleasure to be able to say that I was part of giving the $100,000 back to Blanco County. It's exactly what we need with the judge's input, and always have to, I feel like I've got to work with the judge to get his feel of what's going on, and that's very enjoyable. I just want to thank the court for letting me be on the board.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate this court very much. I appreciate the opportunity to serve on behalf of Blanco County. Appreciate the opportunity to provide workforce housing, not only here in Johnson City, but have things that are stirring in Blanco itself right now to provide housing. We've already done a lot of that here. We continue to do that. That's what we do. And it's the willingness of this court to see the Texas Housing Foundation, its creation back in 2005, that has allowed all that to happen. And I appreciate the Capital Area Housing Finance Corporation and its ability to, this is the purest sense of how that money is given to these communities, is to provide workforce housing. It's not always done like that. It is being used in other places, but here in Blanco County, it's being used for the purpose for which it's set aside. And so you'll start seeing people stirring there in the tract of land back behind the Community Resource Center this week. And excited about that. You'll also see things happening just south as well in the city of Blanco itself. So just thank you for your guidance, your leadership, and all as we work desperately and willingly to meet the needs of workforce housing across our community. Thank you.
Okay, now we can move on to items 8 and 9, which are connected. Item 9 is the road crossing agreement that Commissioner Granberg has been watching since the road is in his precinct. And the investment agreement amendment that we've pieced together rather fast. Oh, Mr. Ford is here. Okay. I don't know that it matters what the order is. So, on the investment agreement, did you want to say anything about the agreement? Okay. Well, I guess I can just say for commissioners that Commissioner Weir and I met with a representative from the Peyton Colony Community Center, Lawrence Coffey, and it was a very interesting, intriguing visit, and we ultimately identified some needs that we think could be helped with a community investment. As you can see, the list on the draft agreement that Kim has prepared. And we hope, and I don't know if this is actually going to be enough money or not, having been involved in a little bit of remodeling, it never goes like it's planned. But the hope would be to take a good look at a lot of these things, and it's certainly more than anybody has ever come up with Peyton Colony before. So, what do you want to add?
Well, when we met with Mr. Coffey and he gave us a tour of the facility, gave us the history. As a kid, I was always around it, and I was honored to go to some of the celebrations that they had there over the time. Just a very unique and beautiful community, and they're trying to get to the point to where they can have small fundraisers and do some things on their own there in the building and use the schoolhouse and maybe some sort of cover if we can get that done for them, where they can continue to try to raise some money and get this thing brought back up to par and continue using it as a meeting center for the community. So I thought it was a vital function for them. They've been struggling all along. People have donated wells and done some other things to help them, but they need that extra boost to get them up to par where they can start to generate a little bit of money on their own with their annual. They have an annual festival and then other meetings in between where they can have some fundraisers. So thought it was a very good and a good request. We went out and looked at it, walked the grounds, and I just think it would be it's just a great thing if they can invest that money and get this thing done.
Now, Connie had, when she originally prepared the agenda for me, she had the two reversed. She had the road permit, the crossing permit, and then the community investment agreement. And I asked her to reverse them, in my mind thinking that I wanted to make sure we got our part taken care of before they got their part taken care of. But now, thinking it through and in light of discussions, it seems to me there would be no necessity for an amendment to the investment agreement if there is no roadway crossing permit. So maybe the roadway crossing permit should come first. So with your permission, I'm going to ask that we consider 9 before we consider 8. There's Miss Ashby. I think while there's a pause and I guess commissioners are contemplating it, I want to ask you about the consequences if we just do nothing, if we just pass this.
So other
same terms as and conditions as the original agreement.
Not that I would expect her to see it that way, but I see it as a little different because the other permits, by and large, were just going under our road, the county's road. This one really is traveling along a state highway that just happens to go under our road at the intersection. Is that fair? You're shaking your head, but can you say yeah or no? Or?
Yes, by looking at the plan, they're rerouting around the Blanco River, which I think is a better idea, which means they will have to go underneath Middle Creek Road, and then once they get under that, then they've got to go under the state highway, which they were going to do anyway at the previous location. So we've already done it at Chimney Valley. We've done it at several other locations with no issues. It's just boring under the road. They've had no issues of any kind at the previous road locations. Those pipes are there. They're already installed and been covered up.
You observe when it's boring under the road, it's not like a directional bore. I mean, it's a straight bore under the road. These permits here, you'll see it allows for this permit allows for 5 feet under the deepest ditch line or whatever. That's what we had on the others. When we observed them on each crossing, we watched them drill. They went underneath and there's no drilling mud involved. It's very shallow. It's right underneath the road, between 5 and 8 feet on the last ones that we saw. And it was all chalk. And you saw it coming out of the back of the auger that goes through it. So it's a short pass. There's 60-something feet. This one here, I noticed, so it comes out the radius of the highway's 120-something feet, so but it's still a short bore. If I'm not mistaken, they're going to go underneath the state highway, which the state highway just sometime last week or whatever permitted for them to go underneath the road there. So that the state has already permitted for them to go underneath that location. So the state doesn't seem to think there's a problem.
So, if there are no motions, we'll move on.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
It's 9.
Yeah, to approve the application for the roadway crossing permit for Kinder Morgan.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Granberg, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Dropping back to item 8, the amendment to the investment agreement.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the investment with Kinder Morgan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Eaker. Discussion. You know, if we're going to have disruption, I'm going to have to ask for some help. All right. Any further discussion?
Judge, should I also include the amount?
Sure, it's fine.
The investment agreement for $85,000.
Other comments, other thoughts? There is one thing, I'm not 100% sure. So the last iteration of this agreement designates the county treasurer to set up the trust fund. Are you okay with that? Okay. Anything else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Taking us to item 10. This is almost a ministerial matter. Jim Allison, the counsel for the Judges and Commissioners Association, provided this to the counties, the documents that we would execute. Essentially, when we're under a declaration of disaster, the county is allowed to go to, or to stay at the 8% voter approval rate versus the 3.5% voter approval rate enacted in Senate Bill 2 this past session. And so this is a standard practice being exercised by a lot of counties to, all it really does, to be honest, to be clear, Ms. Fry has calculated it both ways for me, both at the 3.5% cap and the 8% cap. So it's not a question of getting the information, it's a question of she has to have something officially in her file when it's all said and done, and it either has to be the 3.5 or the 8%. For your information, if you don't know, I don't have that, I don't think I have the other one in front of me. I believe the one cap lists the voter approval rate at approximately 42.5 cents per hundred, and the other cap lists this is probably the 8.8, and the 3.5% cap lists the voter approval rate. I'm going to say I remember it being around 44 cents. So in either case, under the present proposed budget and the discussions that we've been having, we're not going to get near there, either of those numbers. So this is really just sort of a safeguard. Anything more to say on this? Any thoughts on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the directing of the voter approval tax to be calculated at 8%.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Weir, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. As you can see in your packets, item 11, Ms. Windmus has provided the bond for being the new county auditor, and it needs your approval.
Make a motion to approve the bond for the auditor and payment of said bond.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Eager, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next agreement, which is an interlocal with Capcog, basically involves Ms. Strickland's management of our part of the Geographic Information System database for 911, and her input into the overall database management system that Capcog administers.
I'd like to make a motion authorizing the county judge to sign a Capital Area Council of Government interlocal agreement for 911 Geographic Information System database management.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Granberg, discussion. I saw that Ms. Strickland was given some sort of certification this past week, which means that the county's in good standing, I guess, at the moment on the GIS project. Is there anything else, any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 13 is our standard authorization for the sheriff to enter into the working agreement with the ABTPA, Auto Burglary Theft Prevention Authority.
I move we consider the authorization for the county to enter into a cooperative working agreement with the Automobile Burglary and Theft Prevention Authority for the sheriff's Combined Auto Task Force FY 2021 grant approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Commissioner Weir. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 14, the sheriff's and constable's fees. I see Chief Leonard. I know these. I know this was provided by the sheriff's office. Is the constable included in these fees? Do we know?
Yes, they are.
They are. Okay, so this package is the whole package that the commissioners need to review. Okay. So, any motions or thoughts?
Make a motion to approve the sheriff and constable fees for FY 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gramberg, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Spies is recommending that we continue and maintain the fee schedule that we have for motor vehicle registration. It's in your packets. We would check the first box. It says no change, and that's the proposal. Any motions or thoughts?
I'll make a motion to keep it as it is, keep the imposition of the optional fees for motor vehicle registrations for 2021 as the option A.
Is there a second? I can't tell which one of you. Okay. Commissioner. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do you have the, I have to. So item 16, sorry, is bids for precinct 2 paving, and we have received 2 bids. So, gonna ask precinct 2 paving. Gonna ask Commissioner Eager to open them.
Rubicon Paving Company has brought in bid of $3.06 a square yard. This one does not come out by the square yard, and that's what I asked them to vote it on, submit it on. No, it's not what I asked for, sir. After you did it by the square yard, you did it by the pallet.
Can you convert it?
Probably could, but it's gonna take a while.
By the pallet?
Yeah, 112 bags, it's gonna take more than patch. This is a paving job, it's not a patch job.
They're two completely different.
Two completely different bids, this is what I asked for here.
they say by the pallet, are they literally wanting to sell you some paving material?
112 bags of asphalt patch, which it's going to take, you can't do the job with asphalt patch, you have to have paving.
Well, is that maybe your asphalt patch bill? But maybe that's what that is. Maybe that wasn't the bid.
Who is the vendor?
That's a bill right there.
Oh, that's a big, I'm sorry, folks, I only have one. $3.06 a yard.
All right, so the other one's not even a bid.
No, it's not even a bid.
Okay, so you only have
I
the,
have another company bidding, but this is the only one that came in. My fault.
all right.
Really big, what's the specs on there? I'm just curious what's grade 4, 38.
But at the present time, do we accept it or
Yeah,
can we postpone it?
no, if you want to accept it, you just need to select it and move to select it.
Need to.
You need to move to select it if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
Otherwise, you have to go back out to rebid.
Go back out and read
Do y'all want to look at the specs on it? It's 120 tons. 120 square yards per ton, excuse me. It's shot at 38.38.
That's about what he
Yeah,
quoted us.
that's what he bid mine, same price.
Was that the same as what you got last time?
Yeah,
Yes.
Uh,
Same specs and same price.
You seem hesitant. If you delay it, if you want to think about it, I guess.
now let's go ahead and accept it.
So that's your motion.
That's my motion. To accept it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Granberg, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Moving to item 17, considering the preliminary subdivision plat for the 1623 divide.
Corrections have been made that I asked for, with some cleanup still before we go to the final, but I would like to make a motion to accept the preliminary plat with cleanup of cul-de-sacs and showing where the target suppression tank is going to be on the final.
Is there a second?
I have a question about that off, and is Mr. Silkman here? Are y'all proposing the 2 inches of hot mix? Yeah. Can you give us some background on that? I mean, if you're asking for, instead of 8 inches of dead space, you're asking for 6 inches or 2 inches of hot asphalt, right?
That's correct, Commissioner. We have a letter from Areas Construction, Areas Geophysical, and they're recommending that we use 6 inches as the base with 2 inches of hot mix, and they're saying that it is an equivalent or exceeds what is required by the county regulations.
And that's the engineering group that gave you that recommending that?
That's correct.
Okay. I didn't have that here.
We just got
Gotta
to
make my motion.
But what they're, if I'm not mistaken, you're asking for a variance on our subdivision regulations, which are 8 inches, with 2 coats of seal coat. You're asking for 6 inches with 2 inches instead of what we asked for, 1.5 inches. 2 inches of hot mix.
That's correct.
And you've got a letter from an engineering group that says that it is as good or better than what we're asking with our double seal coat.
This is the front that we doing the geotech on the subdivision. The business separated in the base density. They made the recommendation.
So y'all are asking for a variance.
Variance on the pavement. On the base and the pavement. Yes, I need to add that to my motion.
Well, it's variance on it.
Variance.
Connie, what does the regulations say in accordance to a variance? Is there any special procedures? I don't know off the top of my head.
I think the subdivision regulations just require you to
Commissioner court
take it on
approval.
a commissioner court approval, and it has to be done on an individual basis, one, like this.
So, but we could accept the preliminaries at this point in time and then accept the variance at a later date, once we have the information in front of us, correct?
Yeah, I'd say I need information in front of me before I can bring it up before.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, they're gonna move along on their pay. They're gonna move along on it with the preliminary plat approved. So you gotta come up with something before you get to that stage.
And it could be brought back to the next commissioner's court, right?
So what do? They sit there and wait for us to go through the final plat before they can move
I mean,
forward?
I don't know if they've already started cutting roads or what, so. I mean, they've got density tests and everything else to get happen prior to putting hot mix down, so.
Right, which the density test, if Commissioner Ingram wants to, I'd stick to the same density test.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, you meet the density test on.
How long before y'all start this paving?
The pavement or the base?
We're talking about the base.
The basic?
The base, I think we're still a month away from putting the base down.
How far away?
A month away before we even start putting base down.
Okay.
Working on stuff right now. This letter is from a licensed professional engineer who says the road we are planning to build is superior to the road specifications of Lincoln County. We're substituting 2 coats of oil gravel. We're substituting 2 inches of hot mix asphalt, which has a structural integrity many times greater than the oil. And we're simply reducing the road from 8 inches to 6. And by the way, the speed inch requirements are running out from some regulations. I don't know if there's a road that's built in the county right now that's 8 inches to base. This engineer says the road we're gonna build is actually superior to the road that's in progress.
We've got several new subdivisions that have 8 inches of base now. There's one on Crab Apple. There's another one at, off the Trainer Weeks that have gone that route. They didn't go the hot mix route. They went the double seal coat. So when you get into the double seal coat, that does change the dynamics of the road a bit. And, so I'm curious, I'm asking, is that something that the court would be interested in a variance or whatever it might be to allow to go to 6 inches of 95% base and get it compacted and then go back to 2 inches instead of 1.5 inches of hot mix, 28 foot wide is what, if I read the plat right, it's 28 foot wide.
And I'm not saying that I wouldn't, I would like to see it, I'd like to see the paperwork prior to making a decision on the variance though. So, I mean, I don't have an issue approving the preliminary plat right now and coming back to next Commissioner's Court with a variance on the change in the actual road surface.
Is that something that you can do the preliminary plat approve it and then work towards the final plat with that included?
I think so, Judge.
You can, I'm just trying to figure out what the benefit is to approving the preliminary
I mean, I don't see,
with a question mark over it.
well, the preliminary plat, it's not really the road construction, so it's just showing us the plat lines and everything else of that nature. We're not talking about the building of the roads yet. I mean, they're supposed to be built in accordance to our subdivision rules and regulations, and actually they shouldn't be even done until the final plat is approved, because at that point in time we could say, no, it doesn't pass, so they're out that money. However, I know a lot of contractors do, so, and they take that risk. But I don't see a problem approving the preliminary plat and then coming back with a variance to redo the surface, road specs at prior to the final plat approval.
Yeah, I'd like to see the specs on the engineering on that too.
So to be clear, the documentation that you're missing, because I think I'm thinking the same thing, is this engineer's representation that this is a
Right.
a good
Right.
thing.
And we can take it to our experts and, you know, have them look at it and verify, you know.
If I'm not mistaken,
And we don't have
other
that,
counties have that in their restrictions.
but we don't have that letter right now that he's
Correct,
referring to. All we've got is this.
correct.
All right, so what do you want to do with your motion that you do not have a second for yet?
Okay, let's accept it as it's presented, and with the exception of the payment, if they can get it to us by next commissioner's court, we can look at it.
Well, I'm going to try to modify it, help them get it. They need to get it to us right away.
Right away.
Apparently he has it in his hands, so it needs to get to the commissioners
And we can set it up on the next commissioner's
so
court.
you can review it, so it can be on the next
Review it for
commissioner's
review.
court.
Okay,
Is that basically the essence?
that's it.
Is
And
there,
then you're also asking that prior to the final plat being submitted, that they include the water suppression system
Yes.
on the plat itself.
On the plat itself, along with the measurements on the cul-de-sac, the radius and all, those look cul-de-sac. It's just a round circle on the preliminary right now.
is that
I'll second it.
clear to everyone? Okay. Commissioner Weir seconds it. Further discussion. I saw Mr. Fiesler in the room,
Yes,
and I thought I remembered that there was a
yes,
wa-
there is water availability today.
but I thought there was an issue last time.
It wasn't complete, it is complete now. Would you like to comment on it?
No, they corrected the couple of little things that needed to be fixed, and it's good to go now as far as water availability goes.
I've noticed some of the new restrictions, I've reached out around the collective impact of some of the other wells outside the subdivision.
Yeah, there's some wells in the, what was it, Albert 303 project that were within 1,000 feet, and they picked those up at my request and included the discussion on that in the water availability report.
All right. So as I understand it, we're going, this motion and this vote would be to approve the plat presented, schedule for the next agenda, a consideration of a variance to alter the way the roads are constructed. And in the meantime, you all will receive the information to study how they want to modify the construction. Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Burn ban remains in place at the moment. Anybody care to discuss it? That takes us to the budget. On page, I'm not cutting anyone off if you want to discuss another page, but I wanted to get to page 10 because that had the most discussion, and I think we had some homework to do. And actually, so throughout this budget, what we did was apply the formula that the sheriff wanted to apply to his department, and Commissioner Leisman asked if we would look at applying that same formula county-wide, which would be there would be a 2-year longevity payment of 3.25%. A 4-year longevity payment of 2%, and then it would pick up with the existing county's longevity system. And so we did that along with a 6% cost of living adjustment. And the numbers are listed. In the third column. And then the far right column where there are some blue numbers. Your page, is your page 10 different than mine, or are you looking at something else?
This is something she just handed us.
Okay. Right. So all of this combined is what gets to the red number. All right. So the page you're looking at is not the page I'm looking at. I'm looking at the actual page in the proposed budget, draft proposed budget on page 10. So my numbers are red. Sheriff's numbers are blue. And again, and for the big sheet that you were looking at a minute ago is for all the employees.
So Judge, the numbers that you have in red, that is
that would be the final number of employing a cost of living adjustment and the 2 longevity payments that the sheriff was proposing.
Okay. So I know the sheriff's office there was a supervisor pay.
And Connie was telling me we did put that in there, right?
Their current pay plus the 6, or plus whatever level. The numbers that you gave me, Camille, did they, the hourly rate, did that include that supervisory pay or just their base?
That is what they are paid hourly. I get a letter from the sheriff's office telling me what to pay them, so I don't know. I can't answer that. I think most of the time the supervisor pay is included unless it's on MOTA. During the year, then we have to refigure it, but the hourly rate or the base salary is what they're being paid right now.
And that includes supervisor pay?
I believe so.
Did you say, to answer the question, yes?
Yes, it is included.
Supervisor pay is included in those red numbers.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how many supervisors they have?
I bet the chief could.
Supervisors in which division?
The entire office, the sheriff's office, how many supervisors? How many people actually are classified as supervisors?
9, not including the sheriff.
So, I hate to be repetitious. Don't go away. I hate to be repetitious, but did I make it clear that that we applied the 3 3¾ and the 2% longevity payments to everybody, not just the sheriff's office?
Okay.
And it added, I don't, we had the numbers, and they didn't make it onto this page, but it added $8,000 or $9,000.
Yeah, not even that much really, because if you look at the sheet,
Mhm.
look at the yellow and the orange column.
Because this just has sheriff's department people on it that I can see.
Oh, okay.
But that was your
So for the proposed,
thought was to, the discussion last time was doing it for the sheriff's office, and you asked about doing it for
Everybody,
everyone.
right.
And we made those calculations, and it added
Okay, here it is. The completed fourth year, but not the fifth, was basically $2,374.
for the rest of the county.
For the rest of the county, and then, $1,465 for the Cleanup.
so on the proposed longevity, after 2 years, you get, what's the percentage after 2 years?
3 3/4, or 0.0375.
Okay, and then, in 4 years, it's
2.
The non-SO employees at 3.75 is $4,549. And the non-SO employees at the fourth year, the 2% is $1,465.
So then, after those 2 percentage payouts, is there any more longevity that we're proposing? So what's the next?
Proposing
Well, what's the next?
5 years.
At 5 years, it's what?
That's been traditional for a long time, and it's 5%.
They don't receive it until after the fifth year.
Yeah.
Correct. They receive it in their 6th year after they've completed their 5th year. But then again, you receive the others in your 3rd and your 5th year because you have to complete 2 and 4.
And then after the 5 years?
It's 1% for the rest of your tenure.
Okay. So, the way we currently do it, we're at 5 years and then everything after that, right?
That's correct.
So I thought, okay, let me back up. My assumption was we're losing employees prior to getting to that 5 years.
I think that's a part of their
So
argument.
that's why we were trying to get to the 2-year and the 4-year longevity pay. So I guess my question would be, why would we do a 2-year, a 4-year, and a 5-year? Why wouldn't it just be a 2-year and a 4-year?
I don't really have a good answer for you other than the 5-year, the 5 to 15 year has been in existence
Right,
before
yes.
me.
And I know, and I understand that. But now that if we're changing from the 5 and everything after, we're going to a 2 or 4, should we either we reduce the 5 or take the 5 out? Either way, I don't know.
I'm assuming if the sheriff was here, he'd argue that they calculated it at 3 3/4 and at 2 at 2 and 4 years, counting on at 5 years there'd be another big bump.
Well,
But I don't know that.
I talked to the sheriff, and he mentioned that he, his major goal, and I can't put words in his mouth, but his major goal was to make the longevity a 2 and a 4 year, and then to have a 5% for supervisor pay. So if you're a supervisor, you get an additional 5%. So we didn't really discuss the 5-year longevity, does that make sense?
Now, something to think about is if you do if if you do what you said, we drop 5 and just do 2, 4, and I guess 6 on, right?
Well, or reduce that 6 to, you know, I don't know, 1, because that 6 is on top of whatever.
I'm sorry,
you're-
I'm not saying, I'm sorry, we're not saying the same thing. You have a 2-year and a 4-year, and then you pick up at 6 years. Because right now you have 5 years, and then after on the 6th year, it's 1%
Right,
on.
yeah,
So if I hear you right, you're saying a 2-year, a 4-year, and then at 6 years, it's 1% on.
Right.
And you drop the
plus,
and you drop the 5% at 5 years.
right, just delete that.
Right. And there's the cost of living, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about longevity.
Right.
And what I was going to say is something you might want to think about is I think it even applies for an employee or two at the sheriff's office, but it also applies to an employee or two in your offices or out there in county land that are maybe hitting 5 maybe this year, and they'll lose it.
Right, but in those situations that are the people that they're trying to get to their 5, they'll actually get, I think we ought to go back and do the 3.75 and the 2. So those people, so they'll get.
They don't get any, I mean, you can, I guess you can.
They'll give them a
Yes.
5.75.
If you want
If somebody has not reached the longevity to that point, but it's almost there, we can't punish them. You know, so I think we ought to give them either, 5.75 as a longevity, a one-time deal or whatever, to bring them up to, or, I don't know.
You're basically grandfathering
Huh?
You're basically grandfathering
Right. So if they're already over their 2 years, but they haven't reached their 4 years, they need to get the 3.75. If they're hitting their 5 years right now, then we need to get them back. We need to get them at least 5, if not 5.75.
So the bookkeeping would have to be that you keep up, they would keep up with everybody, at least for the first 5 years, to figure out
Right.
who qualifies for what.
Well, everybody that's been here beyond 2 years.
2 to 5.
Yeah. Logistical nightmare?
Yes.
Turn around over here, yeah.
Yeah. The first time it would be a nightmare, right, Connie?
Yes. This is what it did for here. So as of 10/1, every employee, this is how long they will have been here.
Mm-hmm.
So just pick somebody, they've been here 6 years and 2 months as of 10/1. So if you're wanting me to recalculate on exactly what?
Well, so for instance, this person has already received their longevity.
Right, okay.
So this person here would receive the 2 or 3.75.
Correct,
Same with that one.
okay, and
Same with that one. This one would receive
2%.
5.75 because they haven't been to the 5.
They finished at 4, but they haven't done their 5, so they would get 2%.
Well, but they never got the 3.75 to start with.
Okay, so, I mean, you're wanting to combine?
Right. If anybody below 5, they need to be brought up to the 5.75. Anybody below 4 needs to be brought up to 3.75. And yes, I know it's going to be a nightmare this first year, trying to get that. I mean, I don't know how else if you're going to change your longevity, how else do you just start it?
Well, it's going to be that you have to.
The first one's going to be terrible.
Yeah, actually the first 3, because you're really going to be dealing with people between 2 and 5. It's okay. I mean, it's
Right.
It's doable, but it's work. Okay.
Judge, something too that we're gonna have to do is change our personnel policy along with all of this.
Right. Right. Well, this discussion today gets me to file a proposed budget on Friday that the Commissioners Court reviews the next meeting and adopts some kind of a proposed budget that we can then have a hearing on. So we're moving along in the process, and we'll need to put the personnel policy on the agenda to review, if that's what we're going to do, if we're going to take out the 5 and go to these 2 other ones.
Question I have is, you're talking about the percentages at the start of a new budget. Doesn't make any difference if they reach their 2, 4, 5 year at the capital point of the budget. They have to wait until a new budget comes around before they actually receive these.
That's how the longevities have been calculated and budgeted since the beginning. And that way, it didn't matter whether you were 2 years and 1 month or 2 years and 11 months. On your 3rd anniversary, you began getting the longevity payment for being here 2 years. Something about this makes me anxious for the people that were, I mean, your proposal actually benefits people that are about to get 5% for
Absolutely,
being
they'll
here
get
5
5,
years.
7.
Right. Somehow or other it makes me anxious, but it sounds like it's a benefit for the employee.
In my opinion, it would be. And you know, the over 5, or you know, instead of the 1%, I don't know. Do you consider a 2%? I don't know that. You know, or do you think after I had them here for 6 years, you know, they're gonna stick around?
Yeah.
On the cost of living plus the 1%. I don't have an answer for that. You know, if we're satisfied with the 1%, anybody that's been here over 5 years plus the cost of living, you know, that's fine. But if you think, well, it's, you know, if that's fine, that's fine. I have no problem with that.
Anybody else have anything on this, on that point? Okay. We can back up and go through whatever pages or thoughts you have about the budget. Oh, can I, if you don't mind, I'd like to just mention a couple of things. On the district clerks, I think I'll inform you of a couple of large increases that I have proposed since the last time we talked. On the district clerk's page, I have put in a line item for $60,000 to make the first of 5 interest prepayments to CoFile for digitizing and preserving all of her records back to the 1800s. It's expensive, but it's kind of an urgent project that we really need to start, and we don't have, the district clerk, as you know, doesn't have a special fund that is as robust as the county clerks. It just doesn't, the archive and preservation fund just don't make the money that the county clerks does. So we were able to use CoFile and preserve those records and digitize those records without general fund revenue, but we're really not going to be able to do that with the district clerk, but it needs to happen. And so, and the reason I used 60,000 is because they think at the outside limit, and it's been my experience with CoFile that they always quote a little high and try to come in a little lower. And so they suggested it's a $300,000 project. But because Blanco County already uses them for an existing project, and we've used Vanguard for the internet piece for the public, that we're a preferred customer, and they'll give us up to 5 years of no interest financing. So $300,000 divided by 5 is $60,000, and that's why that line is there. Additionally, Commissioner Greenberg heard from the engineer that we should just tack on 15% from the previous bids or quotes to refresh them for the time period that's elapsed. And so we did that. It came up with $241,500 in his project line. Increased the autopsies from its current rate or its current amount to 50,000. I believe that was suggested by the treasurer and the JPs. So those are the big highlights. And the floor is open for whatever you'd like to talk about on the budget. Camille, it's not in here, and I didn't get a chance to ask Connie, but why would we not apply, if the Commissioners Court chooses to do a cost of living adjustment for the county, why wouldn't we apply that to the auditor's salary also? I've been thumbing through the pages, waiting for you, and I've come up to page 17 on the, I'm sorry, that's judicial, that's not what I want to be. But I'll get there. Community services on page 21. I'm informed that Jim of the Hills would like to be included in the community services contributions by the county. And I have I have two different competing thoughts on this, because first of all, the budget calendar has been out since maybe December or January, and so everybody should have been aware of our timeline, and really April and May are the time to be pitching things like that, but they didn't. On the flip side, we're still in the budget process, and it's in the works, and there's nothing to keep you all from considering new information and new requests. So I'm going to file the budget, at least with the community services page as it is, but I think you might anticipate possibly in the next Commissioners Court, where the budget is on the agenda, that the Jim of the Hills representatives may want to come in and make a pitch to be included in community services. Is that?
How much did they ask for?
I haven't been I'm not a first party to this.
Okay.
I'm a second party to this. I've heard numbers that were far in excess of any of these, actually in excess of the total of these on this page. But that's just what I heard.
Judge, I have on page 4, line 101 needs to be increased, the same as everybody else. Connie, you know that?
Yeah, I'm gonna file it this way, because that's how I always file it, and then if you wanna make that change
That's fine.
afterwards, that's fine. But I just don't propose my own raise, and I never have.
And then the page numbers.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay.
It keeps wanting to change the header when she changes the. We have gotten figures. I don't know if we got them from Lieutenant Woodring or Chief Neal or who, but we got figures for a body camera and a vehicle camera for the constable, and they are more and less, or excuse me, less and more than I thought they'd be. The body camera was a little cheaper, and the car camera was a little more expensive than I would have thought. But they're in there in the capital equipment page.
Yes, I did. I didn't get to read it out.
Oh, I think I want to put this on the agenda as a discussion item, but I think it's okay just to bring it up here. It made me think of it, because I'm looking at the road and bridge precinct pages. And of course, we've put in a project for 3 and 2, or 3 and 4 and 1. And it made me, and we have that grant going on for the project that Precinct 2 is working on. But I wanted to bring something up. It was a brilliant idea that somebody gave me. And I want to have a discussion about it at a future date, but I wanted to give you a kind of a preview. And maybe you can learn more about it in the meantime. The State Highway 2766, A. Robinson, goes to the gate of the park, and State Highway 3232 from 290 goes almost to the gate of the park, and then they stop, and the county road picks it up to the end of the county line. And I think we should think about and have a discussion about petitioning TxDOT to take 2766 to the end of the county.
Great idea.
Now, actually, what they should do is take it all the way.
Good luck, but great idea.
What they should do is take it all the way to State Highway 12. But that's kind of Hayes County's issue, and I don't know how that works. You know, you see signs that say state maintenance ends and it's a county line when it says that, so I don't know. But I do think that road gets traveled enough, and for park purposes and all, that it kind of just doesn't make any sense that you have two state highways that converge and they just stop, but the road keeps going and we're supposed to pick it up. So I think we ought to consider, and I will tell you this, although I still think we ought to have this as a discussion later, that our transportation plan and economic development plan is still percolating. The CapCog people think it would be a really good idea to include this request as part of that to try to get TxDOT to buy off on it. So, something to think about.
Connie, on page 32, under fencing, can we add verbiage to say fencing and upgrades or in yard upgrades or something to that nature?
The no new revenue rate calculated by Ms. Fry is 38.0. $38.06 per hundred. This budget is built around a 39.5 cents per hundred assessment for M&O and INS. The voter approval rate that you approved today will be 44 cents, a little over 44 cents. And the de minimis rate that I'm sure you all have been educated about at various commissioner seminars is 50.26 cents per hundred. So that doesn't mean that we could go to 50 cents per hundred with no consequence, because that would exceed the voter approval rate. But what it does mean is we can exceed the no new revenue rate by the $1.50 that, or roughly $1.50 that I'm proposing, with the same consequences you would just being the no new revenue rate. In other words, we would just have the regular hearings on the rate that we're used to having, or hearing. It used to be multiple hearings, and now it's a hearing. Just so you're aware that as proposed, you'll still go through the same process, and you'll still have a hearing about, a public hearing about the tax rate if you go with my proposal. To get out of that hearing, you have to have a tax rate of 38.06 cents or less. We actually have on here the removal of the telephone expense, the extra telephone.
I'm sorry, but
The extra telephone, next door to you.
have we done anything?
Well, no, but on this sheet, it says we're gonna remove that $1,200 expense for the budget year. Is that okay? We can get that done in time? I can't remember when this was done, but, and I don't know if we've talked about it, but I have a note on here that we're proposing increasing prisoner transport from 5,000 to 10,000. And if I remember right, just this past week, we probably are making arrangements to meet or exceed our budget for this year with a transport. Right? Shaking your head, yes. And they're becoming, and that's during a time when we're really not that active because of COVID as far as going out and getting, what do you call them? What do they call those things? It's like a TV show. People that are on the run. Fugitives. Yes, ma'am.
We do a lot of times if we have a court case involving the fugitive that we go get, we are providing a letter and receipts to the district courts so they can include that in restitution, so hopefully eventually the county will make their money.
Yeah.
We're just trying on our end, it doesn't always work that way, but we are doing everything we need to do to try to include that and therefore possibly get payback.
Is it upward trend? It's just in the.
Well, expenses are an upwards trend. I think, just ballpark, the last transport was about $2,400. But then the one before that from Utah or somewhere was only $900 or $1,000. It depends. But it clearly comes out cheaper than us buying plane tickets, especially if it's a female and a male or whatever, and you have to have more than one person go, and et cetera, et cetera.
I just wondering how far we're going to exceed their budget. If it would be a big number, or look at it hard.
No, we're gonna hope we don't have any more in the next month and a half, 2 months. If we do, I guess we'll worry about that when we get there.
On page 70, I still owe you some numbers for the emergency management grants that we're going to be receiving and the expenditures. You want to try to get that included in your proposed budget? Okay.
Oh, is this the big one?
Well, the big one for me, and then I don't know exactly what all Mike has, but I know he's been working on those numbers.
Well, yeah, whatever those are easy to plug in though, so.
Right.
By Thursday-ish.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Like Thursday at 4? 4:30? Good thing you have a mask on.
I don't need something about 10 o'clock at night anymore, so that's all right.
All right. Other than that, Judge, that's a lot. Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at him.
Mr. Granberg?
Let's go with what we got here.
All right, everybody seems good. Ma'am? Yeah.
Is that on page 10, you all still have in both optional benefits and purchase of cell phones?
So yes, that has to be, one of them is going to be deleted. I guess that would be something we ought to talk about. The conversation that we had last time in reference to the cell phones for the law enforcement, do y'all think that that's something that we need to pursue and get them a separate cell phone and take away the optional benefits of reimbursing them? I mean, I do think it's a good idea. And is there an order in place that says that we should be doing this?
There's no law that dictates to do this.
The law that you struggle with is the law that requires handing over the phone for public information, if it's a personal phone versus a public phone.
So instead of getting the stipend, we give them a phone.
Correct. And which is to only be used for county business.
Right.
And I think Ms. Ellsbury has worked out a pretty good deal on getting those at a good rate. Mr. Woodring, actually. Let's give him a little credit. So.
The law enforcement discount, it's a good one.
And
They
this,
don't have to pay for the phone.
and this will only be for deputies?
I think if it is,
It's for deputies and all supervisors. The supervisors are dispatched and jail are also on call as well. Their particular divisions.
Okay.
But why wouldn't it include others?
As in,
Commissioners?
oh,
I think it's gonna get there.
Constables, are they included? JPs?
It's, it has to do with law enforcement, so judges is viewed as law enforcement as well.
Can you elaborate?
Well, when they, like, when you assume your position in broadband, you're actually, considered an officer of the court. So,
Yeah.
they could include you in on subpoena if they decide to. Then you'd be hard pressed to have to fight if you did not want to come to the defense.
Right. So that was my point, I thought. Sounded like you were arguing.
Well, I didn't argue for you.
And
I'm arguing against it.
I would agree that you be included the JP.
Well, I mean, if you want to get technical, this is a court. It's a court of five.
I think it's common if it's not part of the emergency in the police department.
Folks, it depends on what your definition of is.
All right. Well, so what did we decide?
I'm for
I mean,
the sheriff's department.
I'm for the sheriff's office because I know that they do a lot of personal calls and giving out their personal cell phone, you know, to a victim or whatever that calls them in the middle of the night, whatever. You know, I think that's a great. And if it does get subpoenaed, then you're not turning over your personal phone. So I have no problem with the law enforcement side of it and reducing their optional benefits to make that match.
So this is on the sheriff's page, so it really doesn't include the constable?
No, the constable, his office phone is a
that true for Constable Stubing?
No, sir, it is not.
But it'd also have to be his, at his request, in my opinion, that he would have to carry 2 phones at that point in time. You know, if he wants to keep his personal phone with him, but he'd also have to carry his constable phone at all times to answer that phone call.
I agree, but I'm just thinking we ought to treat them the same.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I think that he ought to he needs to request it as well. I mean, we can offer it to him, but he needs to. He might say no, he didn't want it. I mean, I personally don't want to carry 2 phones with me every day.
Well,
So we do not pay for Constable Fisher to have an office phone on his desk.
I'm going to think about this one, and
That's fine.
I'll propose whatever I propose, and you all can work with it. So, I'm not sure how to deal with that one. What else? Did you have other reminders?
I believe that was it, sir.
I'll make a motion with adjourn.
Is there a second? Commissioner Weir, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Signatures?